And welcome to our December Happy Holidays edition of Sports Highlights. Greg Bickaveris, glad you're with us for our TV program, also on social media. We're on every Monday at 7 a.m., 2 p.m., and 7 p.m., weekends at 9 a.m. on Cox Cable 47, 517, YouTube, and all over social media. It's a pleasure to welcome our first guest, John Ashley. He's the York High School Director of Athletics and went to Christopher Newport. Good to see you.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate you having me.
Tell us about your background, all the schools you've been at since Christopher Newport, and how did you know that you wanted to be an AD? Because you've also been a coach.
Well, when I transferred after my first year of college at Bridgewater, I knew football I was going to be done with that. I hooked up with Bob Pierce, coached with him at Poquoson High School, followed that up with George Yeager. Then I stayed in touch with Bob Pierce, very good mentor, and followed him to York High School and pretty much been there ever since. He was one of my coaches when I played at York, very instrumental in getting me into the coaching field. It's been a great run. Coached baseball with him as well, and then after he retired and I became the head football coach at York, he came back and was one of my assistants. So
yeah.
We've got a complete circle with that.
The lineage at York is unbelievable with Newport News. I mean, you think about it. Bill Lyons coached at York High School. Before that, he coached at York High School. Yeah. He replaced the legendary Thad Madden. Bob Schmidt and Bob Pierce. Pierce coached at Menchville, right. Also coached at York High School, right. A couple times. Bob Schmidt, whose daughter is the principal, he coached at York, Denby, and he was the first coach at Woodside. So the lineage is unbelievable.
It is, and to have when I first moved to York County, I was able to watch a lot of my former coaches who played for Bill Lyons, and then of course I played for both Bob Schmidt and Bob Pierce when I was in high school. So we're a close-knit family. We still are pretty close. We were able to get together when Reggie Evans came and presented us with the golden football from the NFL after he played in the Super Bowl, and it was nice to have everybody at that game to really honor him at that day.
And of course, Terry Kirby, he went to TAB, and a lot of people that first kind of put York in the map in the 80s, but in my opinion, Coach Hovis, who was at TAB and also coached at York as well, I mean, it's like a who's who of coaches you've had at York High School.
It is, and during the off season, we would all get together. We would meet at the coaching conventions and share stories. And I know I was a little younger than Bob Schmidt, Bob Pierce, and Charlie Hovis, but just to have the opportunity to hang around those gentlemen, those coaches, it was just unbelievable.
And back in the day, it was the York River District.
Correct.
Poquoson, York. There wasn't a Grafton back then.
Gloucester.
Yeah, and of course TAB later on. But you look at that too with TAB and Coach Hovis. He did go against Mike Smith and Cos in the Peninsula District in the mid-'90s. So it's kind of a funny thing how this always evolved. Grafton's played Denby, Grafton's played Churchland. You guys have played Gloucester, which used to be your rival in the Peninsula District. So there's a lot of interchanging. And then, of course, your varsity team had an excellent year this year, but they had to play Phoebus, who primarily plays tougher teams. It's just, when you mix it all up, John, it's really kind of funny.
It is, and we are in a district where we have 10 schools, and we are constantly looking for that non-district game, and we've had a contract with Gloucester over the last couple of years, and we've kind of called it the Battle of the Bridge,
right.
And we're trying to keep that going. But it seems like every year as we roll into the playoffs, Phoebus is always that roadblock that kind of sticks it to us at the end.
Right, and Coach P is also scrimmaged Woodside too, correct?
He has a great relationship with Danny Dotson over there at Woodside. They make sure they get together prior to the season, get some good work in. So yeah.
We'll talk about Coach P. Pereira, correct?
Correct.
He had an excellent year this year. I mean, he had a winning record, so he has a lot of respect.
He does. He runs that unconventional offense to most. That double wing is something that he loves, and it fits our personnel really well. He has a trick play up his sleeve, and it's really neat to see how that offense has evolved, and it's really helped us over the last 5 years. If you look at his record, I believe over the last 5 years, he has 2 district titles. If we throw the COVID season out the window, he's got 2 district titles. Been in the playoffs every year, representing York High School. He's had an unbelievable run here.
How difficult was that spring COVID year? Because that was not that long ago that you played in the spring of 21, the fall of 21, then the fall of 22. Was it tough for those seniors to go out that way?
It really was, and early on we saw some other schools that were hit with the COVID, and they had to back off, and they were out for a couple of weeks. We were able to get a couple of games in early on, and then we were stricken with it, and we lost a couple of games, and then we had to come back, and our first game back was against Tab. We were never the same team.
Right.
Really, really tough to overcome that. Playing football in the springtime just not normal.
No, and there's a lot of attrition year to year anyway. You're going
Absolutely.
to your team in the fall of 23 will not look the same as it did.
No.
Because you had a lot of seniors this past year.
We did. I believe we had 22 seniors. Many of them played on both sides of the ball. But at the same time, we had some injuries this year, which forced Coach P to play some of his sophomores and some of his juniors. So a lot of experience returning. The JV kids had an exceptional year. Looking forward to some of those kids coming up. So he's gonna regroup, and we had our awards banquet recently, and he spoke about this, and he's retooling. He's going to be back, and he's going to be ready to go again next year.
Right, absolutely. Now, did you have to talk to the kids prior to the Phoebus game, meaning some of the younger kids that had not played a team like Phoebus, even though you played them last year in the playoffs? Right. How difficult was that? Like, you just had a great record, great season, and Phoebus is like a college team almost.
Well, often, and I had to do this when I was coaching, you have to talk to your kids and remind them that they put their shoes on the same way you do. They put their pants on one leg at a time.
Right.
And they're going to put their best 11 out there. We put our best 11 out there. So, we have to remind them that they're mortals. They're not superheroes, but they are an exceptional football team. Yeah. And we have to remind ourselves that, hey, we deserve to be where we are. We had an exceptional year, as you stated, and we deserve to be in the playoffs just as much as they do. So, when you put your helmet on, you strap it up. You never know what's going to happen in high school sports.
Absolutely, or college, or the NFL for that matter. Talking to John Ashley, scheduling, is it difficult to schedule? You mentioned the Gloucester, but a lot of the York kids know the Gloucester kids because they're not that far apart.
Correct, and I know we have a lot of kids that hunt, and they travel over the other side of the bridge to the Gloucester side, and they've got friends over there, and it's probably not as a tight-knit group as, say, the York and the Grafton or the York and Tab kids, but they do know each other. They know how they keep tabs on each other throughout the season, but it's a great way to kick off the football season year in and year out. Christy Hunter, their athletic director over there, she's been great working with us, and we've renewed the contract, so we're going to be back at it again, playing them next year.
Yeah, right off Route 17. Of course, you're close to Woodside, and like we said, y'all scrimmage Woodside usually in the summer too. What about the other sports? Tell us about what's ahead for the winter.
Well, we've got Coach Charles Brown, who's coaching our boys basketball team this year. We've got several football players that are coming out. They were a little late, with the extension of our season here, but we're moving into our second week and getting ready for our the scrimmages to get underway. We have a brand new girls basketball coach in Sean Lennon. His son Jordan played running back for us last year, now at Norfolk State. Going to be rebuilding that program. Our wrestling team with Bill Grubbs, year in and year out, very competitive. Track and field with Coach Tate and Coach Ball, do an exceptional job year in and year out. But we have our swimming team, and Coach Davis and Coach Fisher, we hope to be vying for a state championship this year in one, or if not both, the boys and the girls. We should be right in the mix, and really excited for where we're going.
A lot of the schools there do well. Tab does well in field hockey, correct?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Yeah, even though you're not the AD there, but it's still pride that
Sure.
what Grafton and Tab do as well.
Absolutely. I think Coach Wendy Wilson, I think she just either her 8th or 9th state title just the other day. So very, very proud that we're a part of the same school divisions district. They all represent us really well.
I did meet one of your football players, Jameson, I believe his name is.
Okay.
One of the most well-behaved kids I've ever met in my life. I think he played for Coach Pereira.
Yeah, fine young man, very good friends with his grandparents. We're able to watch him develop growing up. And he's really, in the 4 years he's been at York High School, he's really grown into a fine young man. And he's looking at possibly extending his football career into the college level next year.
The demands on time, it's different now, John, when we were growing up. Academics, athletics, activities. Do you stress that to the coaches and to the kids both?
We have to, and we all know that the academic piece comes first. Our coaches have all bought in, and they understand that if somebody's having a difficult time, our teachers do a great job of helping after school, setting up that extra time. We have situations where Saturdays they can come in and get extra help, working on test-taking methods. So we're very, very fortunate to have the teachers that care so much to look out for our student athletes. And our coaches know that if they're not getting it done in the classroom, they're not going to get it done on the court or in the field. So very supportive. They monitor their grades, on a weekly basis. But yeah.
I'll say this too, Newport News Schools have been doing the telecom program here for juniors and seniors, and I didn't get involved till my freshman year in college at George Mason. But I remember Bill Swartz, who was at York High School, and he had a radio station inside the building, 91.5 FM, and he would get me to do shows there, and that's pretty impressive.
It is. It's a shame that we don't have programs like that right now. I do remember Mr. Schwartz there, and a lot of my fellow schoolmates were part of that radio class. But some of those classes, maybe they'll bring back sometime. And they're coming back, but in a different light. But we do miss those old school type situations.
Well, give us a lasting impression about York. It's a good faculty and staff, and y'all seem to all get along very well together.
Well, many of us have been together for 20 plus years, and a lot of the teachers are former students of York High School. So very pleased. As you stated, we have the family ties with my principal, Dr. Shannon Butler. Bob Schmidt is her dad, former football coach. Her mom taught math. After she retired, she came back and taught math part-time. So we're a close-knit family, and we wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Exactly. All right. That is John Ashley right there, the York High School Director of Athletics, went to Christopher Newport, has a lot of Newport News roots as well, and a lot of people watch us in Yorktown and Pocosin on FiOS 17. So I want to tell you thank you for out there for watching, and also as well on other channels too. All the best.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Right there. Stay tuned for our next guest right here on our December holiday edition of Sports Highlights as it rolls on.
You're watching NNPS TV. Catch sports highlights on Mondays at 7, 2, and 7, and on Saturdays and Sundays at 9 a.m. Visit us online at nnpstv.com to view all your favorite episodes. NNPS TV, watching education happen.
And welcome back to part 2 of our December edition of Sports Highlights. Happy holidays to everyone. Hope everybody has a safe and festive holiday season. Please be careful on the road and at home as well. Hope you enjoyed our first interview with John Ashley, the York High School Director of Athletics. Let's welcome now legend Malcolm Zeke Avery, former Hampton University head men's basketball coach, also coached at Booker T, and is now an assistant men's basketball coach at Virginia Peninsula Community College as well. Went to Norfolk State. Good to see you.
It's a pleasure being here, and I'm waiting and enjoying all of this. And I will love to do what I love doing, and that is speaking and talking to kids as well as being interviewed. So I'll be quiet at this point and allow you to continue.
Well, it's so nice to see you too. But I remember I first met Zeke when I was a student, a junior in high school at Ferguson, when his Booker T team took on George Walters and Ferguson, Ferguson was excellent that year in 1984. And they came from Norfolk on the road, and you took care of business, Coach.
I remember that so vividly too, because when we got to the gym, the kids were excited, but they were not allowed to go on the floor for whatever the reason, because we usually did our shoot around after the girls came off the court for halftime. And when we got there, we dressed and we went out, and they told us we could not go on the court for whatever the reason. But anyway, the kids took that, and that was sort of a motivation, to tell you the truth. They gave us a little bit of an edge to do the job, because we couldn't do what our routine normally was. And well, they took care of business. To make a long story short, they took care of business.
One of our former guests, Lionel Miller, who ended up going to Tennessee, playing for Don DeVoe, tried to be fancy, going in for a dunk, and he missed everything. And I think Coach Walters pretty much got all gray hair after that game. Right. I don't think he ever recovered from it. I don't think I've ever recovered from that game. And I was not even in broadcasting that. And that really, as a kid, that was a monumental win that you got.
It certainly was, and I'm just so proud of the kids who, at one time they were down, but then they came back. But then that particular moment gave them another incentive, because I think that year too, we went on and we won the state.
Yeah, and of course you were there. You used to rival Maury and Granby. Those are great rivals, and you and Jack Baker had great rivals.
Great rivals between the two. And short story, Jack and I started as JV coaches in the Norfolk Public School System, and then I ended up playing as the JV. We played a JV championship at Norfolk Scope, and we had a grand attendance, a great attendance. But I won that JV championship at Norfolk Scope.
Wow!
And we'll never forget that. And then, Jack and I both moved up and became varsity coaches.
Right. And life evolved, and of course, in the same place Dr. J played at Norfolk Scope, and he played at the Hampton Coliseum. And you had a great lineage with Pop Pitts, the former Menchville basketball coach, and of course, former Menchville AD who passed away. May his memory be eternal. But you two are good friends.
Good friends, but believe it or not, Pop Pitts went to Booker T as a student. I was at Booker T as a student. I was on the JV team. Pop came after me. Yeah. Pop and I had a recent, I guess, connection from that basketball teams at Booker T. I ended up going to Norfolk State. Pop ended up coming behind me, and Pop ended up being an All-American.
Wow.
All-American at 6'3", 6'4", but could rebound and run. And, well, we became best of friends.
Yeah.
Even at Booker T.
Yeah, and of course he had great players at Menchville like the late David Pope, and he had a guy named David Hagan who could shoot off the glass. I mean, you don't see high school kids shooting off the glass. That is an art form.
It is an art form, and both of those players we had to prepare for, because those two players, whenever we played Mansfield, and we used to scrimmage, but then we also, during regular season, we will put them on our schedule. At the later years, and when we put them on the schedule, we had to cease the scrimmages. But David Pope, I just can't say enough about him.
Right. David Pope, David Hagan, Anthony Solomon that went to Warwick, and Lionel Miller, the four best players in Newport News history, bar none. And you played against a lot of them.
Ain't no question about it. We had then too Bruce Smith, Julius Norman, Billy Walker, at Booker T. And again, and believe it or not, Billy Walker and David Pope ended up at Norfolk State as players.
Yeah. I always kind of laughed out loud when you see football players trying to play basketball.
Right.
Because usually they're better at football than they are basketball. But Bruce Smith, of course, he went on to Virginia Tech and played for the Bills.
Bruce Smith, I really can't say enough about him, but Bruce used to do a 360
Wow.
and dunk.
You would never know that.
Now, a lot of people didn't know that, and he
No.
could have played. He could have played basketball, and he played well. He played football, offense and defense. On the football, Bruce never came out the field.
Yeah.
And then after season, high school wise, Bruce wrestled heavyweight. Bruce was the first. He played 2 years of baseball. He was the first baseman on the baseball team. His mother didn't want him to play football.
Wow.
She thought that let me keep my baby healthy and away from incidences, and well, the rest is history.
Right. He's in the Hall of Fame. He played on AstroTurf with the Buffalo Bills. And folks, AstroTurf is very difficult. You talk about concussions. AstroTurf is really rough. Talk about your Hampton University days. Not only were you the head basketball coach, but you're also the AD. Would you ever thought back then they'd be in the Colonial Athletic Association today?
Well, I really, the foresight and the vision that Dr. Harvey had was amazing. I said, when I look back at that, he was a visionary, and that tag will always be his baby. He looks ahead. He wanted to play the best and to try to be the best. But as a administrator, myself, let's start with the basketball end. As the basketball coach, Dr. Harvey used to come to my practices, and we would have conversations. He would talk about things that may be possible for me to do, but then he would reflect often in his playing days, because he played military, and he was on that military team. So he has a knack and has an edge and a insight for the basketball. But I respected Dr. Harvey so vividly. And it was amazing, and I just enjoyed the ride and the things that he allowed me to achieve along with his help. Again, I'm so grateful.
Yeah, real gentleman, classy individual.
Yes.
As we're talking to Malcolm Zeke Avery, well, now you've gone to help Mr. Chris Moore over at, not Thomas Nelson anymore. It's called Virginia Peninsula Community College.
Yes.
And of course, you knew his dad, Ben Moore, the late Ben Moore.
The late Ben Moore, I guess, let me say this story too, because Ben Moore, when I left Booker T, or departed from Booker T to go to Hampton, I was looking for a staff once I got out. And guess who I went to? Ben Moore. I said the gentleman and the things that we used to talk about prior to that, we just had a relationship.
Right,
And I was so intent to get Ben Moore on. But Ben was bent at staying with his kids,
Right.
the kids and the players that he had at that high school.
And he replaced Jim Harvey, who was at Warwick High School.
And that's nice.
And you did a great job. Let me ask you a question, because this is important. You saw what happened at University of Virginia
Yes.
recently.
So
That
sad.
you're a gentleman and your demeanor is unbelievable. That life is not always going to be easy. People are going to throw curveballs. We live in a toxic world. How have you maintained your peace and harmony all these years?
Prayer, family, and the other ingredient is faith and friends.
Because you never know what curveball you're going to get.
No, you don't. And there are people out there jealous, envious, but you have to have a deaf ear to some of it, if not most of it, and allow yourself to believe and trust in what you do and the way you do it.
Because people let you down.
Oh, really? Ain't no question about it.
Doesn't matter who.
I mean, the knife in the back, the blaming, the not being accountable themselves for what they were responsible for, but then blame you for it. But you just have to look at yourself and be yourself, but be honest and truthful.
Right, because you've got to be a coach and a shield your entire life for some of these kids who've been vulnerable. Sometimes the kids don't have any money. They come from a single parent home. You've had to be the father figure, an example. You've had to be the wall against the outside world.
A parent called me one night, high school wise, and she said to me, Coach Avery, I won't call his name, but my son has come home and he's disrespected me. High school, on a Friday night.
Wow.
And I said, I'll be over in 20 minutes. And and he was a player on my team. And I had no more problems
That's great.
after that.
And that's a good way to end it. Well, all the best to you and your time and your talent and your
Yes.
treasure. Good luck on the sidelines still, mentoring young Chris Moore.
Chris Moore, he's going to be good.
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah.
And the teams and his training and his experience now, I'm just hopeful that I can give some of that knowledge and experience and wisdom back to him and his program.
And you gave it back to us today for sure. That, folks, right there was Malcolm Zeke Avery. Hope you enjoyed John Ashley and our great guest today for our December holiday edition. For Ray Price, the great crew here, I'm Greg Bicoveris, and of course, we'll talk to you soon.